Imagine a terrace somewhere. No matter the city dot, it's the kind of weather where the sun is still hesitating, where the air is fresh but not cold, where you find yourself sitting longer than expected. Your coffee is getting cold in front of you, and you don't care because that morning you are watching people. Not in any particular way, not to analyze or judge, just that floating observation you sometimes do when you have nowhere to be. When your head finally falls silent and your eyes do the work all on their own, and then you notice something you often notice, actually, but never really put into words. There are people who pass in front of you and you don't see them. They are there, they walk, they exist, but nothing happens inside you. And then there are those others, from time to time, who pass by and something shifts. Not much. A presence, a weight, a density in the air that makes you turn your head without knowing why. They haven't said anything, done anything special. They aren't more beautiful or better dressed than the others. But something emanates from them that you cannot ignore. And you know the opposite exists too. There are people whose mere presence in a room exhausts you. People who suck something out of the air without you being able to put a finger on it. And others who, on the contrary, soothe everything around them, as if the air becomes more breathable when they are there. No one ever taught you this. You were taught how to speak, how to carry yourself, how to choose the right words. No one ever told you that you emit something much stronger than your words. Something you don't control, and that everyone receives. Cleanthes, one of the first Stoics, the one who worked at night as a water carrier so he could study philosophy by day, wrote a verse that took me a long time to understand. The virtue of the soul is recognized by the gate. A simple phrase, almost banal, but when you think about it, it's vertiginous. What he's saying is that your interiority is not invisible. It tints everything. It colors your voice, your gaze, your way of walking, the way you shake someone's hand, your way of answering when someone asks you a mundane question. What the Stoics called the hegemonikon clearly put. Your ruling faculty, the core of everything you are, does not stay quietly inside. It seeps out. It escapes through every pore of your presence, and people feel it. They don't know why. They don't say anything specific to themselves, but they feel it in their gut, in that blurred zone between instinct and thought, in that subtle unease or inexplicable well-being they feel in your company. You know that, don't you? You've met someone who said all the right words, polite, smiling, everything as it should be, but something in you didn't follow. You stayed on your guard for no logical reason. And conversely, you've crossed paths with people who hardly spoke simple, discreet people, but whose mere presence made you want to stay. Not for what they said, but for what they carried, for that invisible, indefinable, yet real thing that emanates from them like heat emanates from a fire. Except we don't choose what we give off. Not through willpower, not the way we choose our words or our smile. You can't decide to radiate peace if you are carrying anxiety. You can pretend. Many people pretend very well for years, but pretending is exhausting, and sooner or later, the facade cracks in a place you didn't expect. What you radiate isn't a choice. It's a result. Chrysippus, the third head of the Stoic school, the one who truly built the system, had an idea that fascinates me. He said our judgments are not simple opinions that we form and forget. They are physical imprints, impressions engraved in the soul like a seal in wax. What no one points out is that these judgments accumulate. They settle within you like dust settles on furniture that is no longer cleaned. After 10 years, 20 years, 30 years of unexamined judgment, it's no longer dust. It's a layer so thick that it has become the furniture itself. You don't even know what the original surface looks like anymore, It is this layer that people feel when you walk into a room. Not you, the layer. That's why you can meet someone who is objectively brilliant, intelligent, competent, cultured, and feel nothing because the brilliance is on the surface. What touches, what attracts, what repels is always what is happening underneath. It is always the layer, and the layer does not lie, even when the surface is impeccable. You know that expression we sometimes use, "I don't know why, but I just don't feel it." That not feeling it isn't irrational. It's probably the most rational thing you can say, because your instinct is picking up on something your head cannot formulate, an inconsistency between what the person shows and what they carry. And your body reacts before your mind has time to analyze. There was a man I crossed paths with a few years ago. His name was Roland. He was about 67 years old, recently retired after a 40-year career in sales. A sales director, the kind of man you look at and think he's won the game. House, car, successful children, comfortable pension, firm handshake, direct gaze. Everything was in place. And Roland told me one thing I've never forgotten. He said, "You know what's terrifying? The silence. Since I stopped running, I hear something I had covered up for 40 years. And I don't even know what it is." All his life, Roland had carried one thing: performance, the objective, the figure, the deal. The next level, the next proof that he was somebody. And that thing was powerful. It had given him everything: respect, money, status, recognition. But it had also covered something else, something he had never taken the time to listen to. And now that the meetings had ceased, the phone no longer rang, and no one needed his decisions. The silence had become deafening. Insomnia, an agitation he didn't understand. He got up at 5 in the morning out of habit, but had nowhere to go. And that sensation he described to me with surgical precision. I feel like an engine someone forgot to turn off. I'm spinning in a vacuum, and I can't stand myself. Do you know what Roland had been carrying for 40 years? Not strength, not ambition, fear. The fear of the little boy who had grown up on a modest farm and had sworn to himself that no one would ever look down on him. His entire career, all his success, all that colossal energy he radiated when entering a conference room, it was fear disguised as mastery. And people felt it, by the way. His colleagues respected him, but no one really got close. His children admired him, but didn't call him to talk about nothing. His wife had learned to live alongside him rather than with him, because what he radiated wasn't confidence. It was tension. A permanent, dull tension. The tension of someone who cannot stop, because stopping means coming face to face with oneself. And face to face with himself, there is that little boy he never had the courage to look in the eye. Roland sincerely believed that his strength was this tension, that it was what had carried him for 40 years, what had allowed him to build everything he had. And in a sense, it was true. But what he didn't see was that this same force had also built an invisible wall around him, a wall that people felt without being able to name it, and which meant that no one ever got too close. Musonius Rufus, the master of Epictetus, a man who was exiled twice and returned each time freer, said something unsettling. If you cannot stand your own company, why inflict yourself on someone else? Roland had fled his own company for 40 years. Not geographically, not socially internally. He had fled what he carried by building so many things around it that no one, himself included, could see what was underneath anymore. And I'm telling you this because Roland is us to different degrees, in different forms, but it is us. We build, we accumulate, we fill, we keep busy, and we call it living. Have you ever changed cities believing it would change everything? Changed partners telling yourself, this time is the right person? Changed jobs, hairstyles, diets, morning routines? And 6 months later, the same patterns have returned. The same types of people, the same conflicts with different faces, the same fatigue deep down under a new coat of varnish. Heraclitus, 6 centuries before our era, said it in 5 words: character is destiny. Not your luck, not your network. Not your career plan, what you carry when you are carrying nothing else. So yes, it is hard to hear that the relationship that destroyed you might have had something to do with what you carried going into it. That the friendship that betrayed you was responding to a signal you were emitting without knowing it. This isn't guilt. It's responsibility. Guilt nails you to the floor. Responsibility hands you back the keys. But beware, there is a trap here, and it is vicious. You will tell yourself, okay, I need to change what I carry. So, I'm going to think differently. I'm going to repeat to myself that everything is fine. I'm going to visualize the life I want. I'm going to stick affirmations on my bathroom mirror. And you will do it seriously, with discipline for weeks, and nothing will move. The same people, the same dead ends, the same fatigue deep down. And you will tell yourself it's still your fault, that you don't believe in it hard enough, except the problem was never your thoughts. Your thoughts are not your imprint. They are two different things. You know what you look like when no one is watching? Not in front of your friends, not at work, not when you're putting on a brave face. I'm talking about that moment. You know it, when you are in your car at a red light and you catch a glimpse of yourself in the rearview mirror. That face, the one you don't compose, the one that appears when you are no longer playing a part. That is your imprint. It is that state, and that is what people pick up on. Think of a musical instrument. You can write the most beautiful score in the world. Perfect notes, a magnificent composition. But if the instrument is out of tune, what comes out will be wrong. No matter the beauty of the score, no matter your talent, no matter your goodwill, the sound will be wrong because the instrument is wrong. Your thoughts are the score. Your deep being is the instrument. And what you radiate is the sound that actually comes out when you play. And people don't hear your score. They hear your sound. And if the instrument has taken hits years of unresolved stress, emotions buried alive, grief not processed, anger swallowed as if it didn't exist, then the instrument is warped. Not broken, not beyond repair, but warped. And no score will compensate for that. No positive thinking will straighten a resonance chamber deformed by 20 years of internal silence. 10 years of books, 10 years of podcasts, 10 years of, I'm working on myself, and still the same face in the rearview mirror, because we changed the strings without ever touching the body of the instrument. And what is the body made of? It is made of the words you say to yourself when no one is listening. Those phrases you've been repeating to yourself for so long that you don't even hear them anymore. Anyway, it's always the same. I'm not made for this. It's too late. Incantations. Silent instructions that you give to your deep being day after day, and which it ends up taking for truths. Think of a close friend, someone you love. Imagine them telling you, I'm worthless, I'll never make it. I don't deserve anything good. What would you do? You would look them in the eye and tell them that it's false, that it's not them talking, that those are old voices they've been carrying for too long. Now, turn back to that mirror, because those words you would never tolerate towards someone you love, you inflict on yourself every day, in silence. And believe me, most of those phrases aren't even yours. They are inheritances. A father who said, you'll never be enough. A teacher who laughed at the wrong time. A look and absence. A phrase dropped on a Tuesday when you were 10 that everyone else has forgotten. Except you. Except your body, which kept it engraved like a law. I remember a woman. Her name was Anne, 52 years old, a doctor, 2 children, divorced, a woman everyone found impressive. And one evening, over a drink, she told me something that chilled me. She said, do you know what the first thought is that comes to mind when someone gives me a compliment? It's not thank you. It's if only you knew. If only you knew. 4 words, an entire life summarized. Because behind the degrees, behind the white coat, behind the competence that no one contested, Anne carried a silent conviction installed since childhood that nothing she did was ever enough. Her mother had never hit her, never insulted her. Her mother did something worse. Her mother sighed, a barely audible sigh, every time Anne brought home a result, a drawing, a victory. No words, just that breath, that silent expiration that said everything without saying anything. And 40 years later, Anne still heard that sigh in every compliment, in every success, in every admiring look. The world said, "Bravo." And her body replied, "If only you knew." That is an imprint. It's not always a drama. Sometimes it's just a sigh. The Stoics had a word for the inverse work, prosoche, vigilant attention. Not attention to what is happening outside, but attention to what is being said inside. What did I tell myself today that isn't true? Which voice did I let speak that isn't mine? A cleaning process to carry less weight. So, how do we change what we carry? Forget the books, forget the podcasts, forget even this video. Do you know the difference between someone who has read 100 books on courage and someone who has already picked themselves up after a fall? It's the same difference as between knowing and carrying. One has it in the head, the other has it in the body. As long as you haven't entered the water, you don't know how to swim. No matter how many times you've watched someone else do it, what you carry is changed by tiny choices no one sees. Holding back the acidic response you had ready. Letting an offense pass without ruminating on it all night. Staying calm when everything inside you wants to explode. Listening instead of preparing what you're going to say. Putting down the phone and looking at the person in front of you. Really looking at them for the first time in months. Each of these choices, taken alone, changes nothing. But accumulated, they slowly straighten the instrument's body. Like a tree, growing you see nothing. And then one morning, there is shade where there was none. No one will applaud you for these choices. No one will see them. That is why they count. Do you know what else changes? What you let in. Have you ever spent an hour with someone who is profoundly calm? Not someone playing calm, someone who is calm. You go home and you feel lighter. You don't know why, nothing happened, but something in you was soothed just by proximity. Now, think of the opposite, an hour with someone bitter, someone who complains, who accuses, who sees the worst everywhere. You go home exhausted, drained, as if someone had opened a valve in you and let something essential leak out. You are permeable. And if you don't consciously choose what you let in, someone else will choose for you. What you watch, what you listen to, the voices that fill your days, the space in which you wake up, all of that plays a note in you every day. And in the long run, those notes become your tonality. But even when you do all that, there remains a passage that no one can spare you. Imagine an old radio, one of those with a dial you turn by hand. When you move from one station to another, there is a brief but real moment where you catch nothing at all, just white noise, static, emptiness. That is exactly what happens when you start to leave your old way of being without having yet found the new one. It is the most uncomfortable moment of the entire process. The moment when most people give up and return to what they knew, even if what they knew made them suffer. Because familiar suffering is less frightening than the unknown void. And between the old station and the new, there is nothing but static, nothing but emptiness, nothing but you, alone with yourself, without landmarks. You no longer know what you want. The people you used to hang out with no longer fit you, but the new ones aren't there yet. You pick up the phone to call someone, and you put it back down because you no longer know who to talk to about what you're going through. What you did before no longer makes sense, but what comes next isn't clear yet. And your first impulse is to go backward, to put back on the old costume, to retune the instrument to the old note because it's the only one you know how to play. That static is the passage. And you must have the courage to stay in it long enough for the new station to appear. Look at the people around you who have truly changed. Not those who changed the scenery, but those who changed from the inside. They all went through a period where they were lost, where nothing made sense. And they didn't come out of it thanks to a method. They came out of it because they stayed. There is one last aspect, perhaps the most uncomfortable. What you carry is not entirely yours. You don't radiate into a vacuum. You radiate within a lineage. Your base state, that background tonality we described, you didn't choose it. You absorbed it. From your parents, from the atmosphere of your childhood home, from the words said to you and the ones never said. If your mother lived in anxiety, your deep being learned anxiety before you could even walk. Not because she taught it to you, but because you bathed in it, like a fabric bathes in a dye. If your father lived in silence and distance, you learned that love is carried like that. Cold, distant, a guessing game. And without knowing it, you calibrated your entire internal system to that tonality, because it's the only one you know, the only one that feels familiar, the only one whose nuances you know how to read. And you grew up attracting people who carry the same thing out of recognition. Your deep being recognizes that tonality as normal, and it moves toward it instinctively, even when your head is screaming at you that it's the wrong direction. It's no one's fault. Your parents themselves inherited from their parents. It's a chain of transmission as real as that of a last name or a house. And most people live their whole lives without even knowing they carry that, without ever asking themselves if this background tonality, this anxiety, this need for control, this emotional distance, this fear of not being enough is truly theirs or someone else's that they absorbed by osmosis in the first years of their existence. But you are not obliged to keep that heritage. If what we are going through together tonight speaks to you, a subscription helps me continue this work. Thank you for being here. You can be the person who breaks the chain, who refuses to transmit the same tonality, who does the painful, slow, humble work of changing the note. Not just for yourself, but for those who come after. There was a man named Henry. Henry had grown up in a house where no one ever said, "I love you," not out of cruelty, but out of habit, a form of emotional rigidity transmitted from father to son for generations. Henry told me he had spent the first 40 years of his life unable to pronounce those words to his wife, to his children. He loved them deeply, but the words stayed stuck as if something physical closed in his throat. And one day, his 6-year-old daughter told him something that broke him. She said, "Daddy, are you glad I exist? Not, do you love me?" She didn't even know that question. She was just asking if she had the right to be their God. And Henry understood, not in his head, but in his gut, that this silence he carried wasn't his. It was his father's and his grandfather's. And he was in the process of transmitting it to his daughter, like a poison passed from hand to hand without knowing it's being carried. That evening, he told her, "I love you." The words came out broken, awkward, almost physically painful, because it was the first time this 40-year-old man had produced that sound, that note his instrument had never played. And he told me it was the hardest thing he had ever done, harder than any professional challenge, any ordeal. Saying 3 words. But you know what? From that night on, something changed. Not all at once, not dramatically, but his daughter became lighter. His wife moved closer, as if by changing his note, the entire family orchestra had begun to retune itself. 3 syllables, 40 years of silence, 4 generations of rigidity broken by a man who had the courage to do something no one in his lineage had ever done. Not to conquer, not to succeed, but simply to tell the truth of what he felt. That is Stoic courage. Not the courage of battlefields, not the courage of grand decisions. The courage of a man sitting at the edge of a child's bed who opens his mouth and lets out 3 words he never knew how to say. Imagine an orchestra without a conductor. Before the concert, it's chaos. Everyone tunes their instrument on their own pure noise. And then the first violin plays a single note, clear, sustained, one by one. The instruments align, and in a few minutes, 100 instruments that were playing noise produce a perfect chord. No one shouted, no one forced. A single right note was enough. Maybe you don't need to change everything. Maybe you just need to find your note, yours, not the one you are taught, not the one you imitate, the one that resonates in your chest when you are perfectly honest with yourself. And when you find it, don't let it go. Even if it's scary, even if it's disruptive, even if some people leave the room, because those who stay, those who tune themselves to your true note, they are the only ones who count.